Mr. Feynman wasn't joking. Chapter 9. Content and Method. Enough to see the path. A conceptual education is not a mood. It is a method, a disciplined way of selecting content, ordering it, and teaching it so a student can integrate knowledge into usable concepts and principles they own. In practice, the method shows up less in slogans and more in what a teacher demands, what counts as evidence, what is permitted as help, and what a student must be able to do unaided. This chapter does not hand over our institution's entire playbook, but it does aim to make the escape route visible. Early or never, why timing matters. The conceptual faculty does not switch on in high school. It grows, or is stunted, from the first years a child tries to make sense of the world. Early schooling that treats words, numbers, and ideas as disconnected tokens trains a habit of mind. Approach every new topic as something to memorize for a test, not something to understand as part of reality. By 6th grade, that habit has usually been practiced thousands of times in both public and private classrooms, because most private schools quietly import the same age-graded, test-driven methods, just with smaller classes and nice uniforms. By 6th grade, the prevailing architecture of schooling and the child's internal school self have locked together. Age grading, fragmented curricula, proxy metrics, and anti-conceptual methods are no longer oddities to be questioned. They feel like what school is. A 6th grader who has spent 7 years rehearsing performance over understanding can still recover, but the work is now remedial as well as developmental. You are not just building conceptual power. You are fighting entrenched shortcuts, evasions, and a quiet conviction that thinking for real is optional. That is why waiting until high school to seek a genuinely conceptual model is, in most cases, waiting too long. The adolescent who finally discovers that education could mean grasping reality instead of gaming a system must also grapple with years of accumulated gaps, anxiety about being behind, and the temptations of AI-assisted fakery that seem tailor-made for an anti-conceptual training. A 6th grader, by contrast, still has enough plasticity and enough school time left to rebuild reading, writing, and reasoning on honest foundations, provided the adults are willing to realign placement with reality and to insist that understanding, not appearance, is the standard, regardless of whether the building is labeled public or private. Start with a different unit, the concept, not the chapter. Most modern curriculum is organized around coverage, a sequence of units, standards, and testable skills. A conceptual curriculum is organized around hierarchies. What must be grasped first so that later ideas become easier, not harder? That changes what progress means. Progress is not finishing the book. It is increasing the student's power to explain, apply, and transfer. Teach from concrete to abstract, on purpose. Concepts do not arrive in the mind because a definition was spoken. They form when a learner notices regularities, differentiates, and contrasts, and only then consolidates that integration in language. So a conceptual classroom is engineered to force that sequence. Rich concretes first, careful contrasts second, language and formalization third, then repeated application until the student owns the idea. Make thinking visible and therefore accessible. If learning is conceptual integration, the teacher needs windows into the integration. That means routine practices where students must expose the reasoning chain, explain why, identify what would change the answer, connect a new problem to a prior principle, and defend a conclusion under questioning. This is one reason AI changes everything. It can generate answers, but it cannot reliably substitute for a student defending understanding in real time. Use AI only in roles that serve cognition. In most schools, AI is adopted as convenience, faster writing, faster homework, faster help. In a conceptual model, AI is constrained into roles that preserve the student's cognitive work rather than replacing it. A workable rule is simple. The student must attempt first. The tool may assist second, and the student must be able to demonstrate competence without the tool later. When AI is permitted, its best uses expand concretes and scrutiny. Examples, counterexamples, alternative explanations to evaluate, and Socratic questioning that pushes the student to justify each step. Build earned use into the culture. In an AI era, the question is not, can we prevent students from using it? The question is, can we train students to treat AI like a powerful instrument that must be earned and governed? That is where virtue stops being inspirational and becomes operational. Rationality for verification, honesty for disclosure and refusal to fake, independence for proving you can do it, integrity for consistency off campus, justice for earned credit, productiveness for building real work, and pride for preferring earned competence over polished emptiness. Align placement with reality, not age. Age-graded schooling forces uniform pacing onto non-uniform minds. A conceptual model takes reality seriously. Students are placed by demonstrated level, then moved by demonstrated mastery. This is not punitive, it is honest. The mind cannot integrate what it does not have the prerequisites to integrate, and pretending otherwise is not kindness, it is unreality. In practice, many parents will say they value solid foundations, but decades of age-graded conditioning run deeper than any slogan. When a child is placed ahead, the same parent beams. When a child is placed where their actual understanding sits, panic appears, and stories multiply about why the placement must be wrong. A conceptual school has to tell a harder truth. You are not behind. You are where you are. And that is the only honest place from which real learning can begin. Starting from a gap and calling it progress does not help a child catch up. It simply buries the gap under harder material until confusion and quiet shame take over. There is no disgrace in standing where you really stand. The disgrace begins when adults ask a child to live in a polite fiction instead of reality, and then call that fiction education. Make entropy the enemy every day. Bureaucratic entropy doesn't announce itself as waste. It announces itself as support, alignment, accountability, and best practices, then quietly consumes the time and energy that should reach the child. A conceptual school, therefore, needs explicit guardrails against internal bloat, fewer initiatives, fewer forms, fewer layers, more direct contact between teacher and student, and more time spent on explanation, correction, practice, and reintegration. In the next chapter, we pull back and ask the practical question the reader has earned by now. If the system persists by inertia and entropy, what does escape look like without fantasy, especially for families and educators who cannot wait for national reform?